Best and serve. We use these two words more than any other words at Supreme Lending.
Best. It's the place where everyone wants to go.
The destination best. Best guides everything we do, the birthplace of best. What the best leaders do when we become our best, the best version of ourselves. Your path to best. Your best. My best. 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 Because every one of us wants to become our best. Serve others. To serve others before self. Serving others. Serving others before self. To serve others before self. Everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Serve because at Supreme Lending, we believe that serving others is the roadmap that leads to best. Serving others. The translation, loving others. Caring for others. If this roadmap to best sounds simple, almost too simple, it's because it is. It is simple, but it's not natural. Because becoming our best requires us to be intentional about how we live our daily lives. And that's why we built the Personal and Professional Best program. The Almighty God confirmed this simple roadmap, becoming your best, when He shared that the two greatest commandments are, 1, to love Him, and 2, to love our neighbors best. We all want it. Serving others, loving others, caring for others is indeed the roadmap to get what we all want. Today's guest is truly one of the GOATs, greatest of all time when it comes to best. She lives her life in the service of others, loving others, and yes, caring for others. Once upon a time, Marci Fair had a crazy idea to start a foundation to serve the underserved children in the community. In 2005, Cares for Kids was started, and in 7 years, Cares for Kids accomplished its original goal to serve, to love, and to care for over 10,000 children in our community. Today, Cares for Kids has exceeded its original goal of serving 10,000 children. To date, Cares for Kids has served, has loved, has cared for, get this, 532,270 children and count. As Cares for Kids looks to the future, it does so with a new, big, hairy, audacious goal, and that's to serve 1 million children. Marci Fair, welcome to Personal and Professional Best.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you, and I'm so happy to talk about Cares for Kids because it not only is a community event that's changing the community, but of course it's changed you, your family, and so many people that have been involved with it because, as we both know, when we live our lives in service of others, it changes us and brings something out. And instead of us focusing on what's natural, which we're getting back in life, when we live our lives in service of others, we actually get back so much more than we would have ever gotten otherwise. But before we get to Cares, which there's a lot to unpack there about what's going on and what y'all are doing to change the lives of kids, I want to talk about Marci Fair. Is that okay?
Okay.
Just a little bit. Tell us a little bit, because there's a lot of folks in the audience today who know you, and they know you through your professional status at Keller Williams and through Cares, but maybe they don't know some things about you, childhood, where you grew up, things that maybe they'd love to know about you. So why don't you tell us Marci Fair's story?
Well, I grew up, I lived in all four corners of the country, landed in a middle school in Arizona with my family. I have a younger brother, 7 years younger than me. And I went to high school. That's where I met Brian in high school back at Chaparral High School in Arizona when we were 16.
Wow.
And so things got started from there. We went to separate colleges. I went to college in Dallas. He went to college to play football in New York. We stayed together the whole time. And when I graduated from college one week, we then the next week went up to his college graduation in New York. And then the next week we got married in North Carolina with all our friends. So bang, 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 we studied the country and chose to live in Atlanta. It had all the components of what we wanted for a place to build our family and our life. And we moved here in 1988.
So you just decided Atlanta was going to be the place?
Yeah, we
Wow.
researched all the big cities around the country, and it had all the components we were looking for. And most importantly for Brian, a professional football team, but that's another story.
Well, you all are obviously very good decision makers, because that was a great decision to make in 1988. You're growing up. Who was the voice or the voices that most influenced who you are in your life?
Well, once I got to college, I started really reading a lot of books. Prior to that, and one thing that I would like to share today, I'm really not all that great. I'm just willing to fail. And failure never stops me. I just find a different way to accomplish something. The earliest, you ask about growing up, something most people don't know about me, I kept running for student body office in high school. Any office I could try for, I went for. And I lost, and I lost, and I lost. And I finally decided to run for the biggest office the high school had, which was student body president of the whole school, not just of a class. And Brian was actually there the day I gave that speech. I actually, of all things, to stand out, wore a Southern Belle dress. High schoolers don't do that. I read a speech that to this day I have the poem typed by a typewriter it's called The Winner. And I read that in the speech and I won, and I became the first female student body president in the history of our high school. The only reason I'm sharing that is because I always want to encourage people to be willing to fail, because it's all in how we look at it. I don't really look at failure as a failure in a negative light. I look at it as a learning opportunity.
Sure.
And so as we all know, all those stepping stones we hop along through our life, get us to a certain place with certain experiences. So all of the things that are happening now in our life are things I built on top of failure. So I just always want to encourage people to not be afraid to fail.
I think that's amazing advice. And for someone else who is an average person who's experienced far better than average in my life, I'm listening to you talk about failure. I fail every single day. I think the idea of still feeling good about who you are, and about the second thing is, what's the purpose of what you're actually doing? When your purpose is good, failing doesn't feel the same. Isn't it just true that you and Brian practice caring, practice loving, practice serving all of the people that are in your life? Isn't that really what's true for Marci Fair?
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So when we teach goal setting, we teach it to have it in 6 categories so that we live a whole life.
Yep.
So not just professional, not just financial. Those are critical, but those are not
Personal.
the highest.
Yeah.
The number one, I have goals in my electronic task manager. I could show you. I read them all the time, every week. And my first one out of my 6 is the relationship goals. And every book that I have read, when someone is talking about having a great life, at the end of our life, the thing that will matter the most will be our relationships,
Absolutely.
either the richness or the lack of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I very deliberately am focused with the end in mind, that I build a great life leading up to that. And so I am hyper focused on, number one, my relationship with my husband, with my children, with my family, and then, of course, all the people who are closest to us and the people beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, if we identify all the constituents that are people that are in our life, right? It's at home first with family, and then extended family, and then friends, then associates. And then it's our neighbors. And we're going to get to that here in a minute, because I think to the extent that they don't have names, all of the folks that make life here in Georgia that we either are in traffic with or otherwise maybe go to church with or sitting in a restaurant, but they're all people that need to be served, need to be loved, want to be loved and cared for. And I find that when I meet people like you that are living rich, really rich lives, and I don't mean financially rich, I mean meaningfully rich lives, they always are just starting and finishing with loving on, caring on, serving on other people. And they make the life about that. And there's just something about those folks, and you're one of them. So let's talk about this Cares for Kids thing. Okay. Where did it start? Like, what was the impetus that gave you this vision to create this Cares for Kids organization? What happened?
Well, I always knew that I wanted to give back. But when we got out of college, we have what I call negative nothing. So we had my,
I know that
you know
because
that.
I got out of college, and Lisa and
You
I were
had
married
negative
at the time
nothing too?
Yes, as I tell people, that the mice they would not have taken anything from us. They're like, these people
There was
have nothing.
There was nothing to take.
They probably brought things back to
Yeah,
us.
yeah. In the
You
early
too?
days, we had ramen, and if it was a really good week, we'd have ramen with carrots. That was, yeah. So, but in March of 1990, so I'm only a couple years out of school, I actually reserved a charity name with the Secretary of State. I had no idea what I was doing, which is a common theme in my life, but I reserved a name thinking that was what you needed to do, and it was free. And I still have that document. It's in a dream book that I created in those early years. And, but it took me 15 years to figure out how to start it. And I am unlike a lot of charity founders in that I have had a very fortunate life. I have had what matters most. I've had the deep, deep love of my mom and dad my entire life. And I started Cares for Kids because it breaks my heart thinking about the kids who don't have that. I just, I can't imagine what some of these kids have been through. And so that was how the idea of a charity, I knew I wanted to help children. They're our future leaders. They have everything in front of them, and their situations are beyond their control. And so if we can help them and we can give them that spark that someone out there believes in them, our word for the charity is hope. And so everything we're doing, we're trying to give those children hope at just the right time.
Sure.
I love The Butterfly Effect by Andy Andrews, and we have no idea the long-term impact, but we are trying very hard to go where our local children need help the most and focus there. So I started it for a different reason than most will start, but that's and it took me a long time. Again, I'm like the turtle. I'm not the hare. I have a daughter who's a hare. I'm the turtle. It takes me longer, but
Well,
I'm very persistent.
you also life with professionally and life with 4 children. There's a lot going on for the
Yes.
last, since 1988 when you moved to Atlanta with how did you say it?
Negative nothing.
Negative nothing. Right. So, but what happened since then is an awful lot in terms of building a family, in terms of building, the relationship that you have with Brian, in terms of building a great business here in the community. So um, don't feel bad about it taking a minute to get it done. I'm just grateful that you did it, and I felt your feeling, because so much of, in my way of thinking, of what is wrong with America is starting with our kids, and the lack of love, meaningful, unconditional love that someone's pouring into them. And if no one's pouring it into them, absent love, absent that unconditional agape love, as God would describe it, right? What's left is just the pain of not being loved, and the darkness of not having hope. that people care about you. And I think we see that play out, unfortunately, way too much. So I'm so grateful that you decided to invest with children because there's so many of them that need it so much. So originally, when it took you a while to get it started, okay, but now we're getting started, right?
Yes.
So you're kicking it off, and
Right.
so did you have a set of goals initially, like I want to do this by then?
Yes. So we're not afraid to set big goals that we might fail at. And so our first goal you mentioned a little bit earlier was to help 10,000 children, which was a ridiculous number. How in the world do you do that? I had no idea. None of us had any idea. And our first year, we helped 697 children, and we were thrilled. We were thrilled that we figured out how to help that many children.
697
Yeah, it
kids?
was 697 children. And so we were really happy about that. But I really, feedback is the breakfast of champions, and staying humble no matter where you're at in life is critical. So we are constantly asking everyone around us, how's it going? How are we doing? What could we do better?
I
How
love
could
that.
we improve this? What went wrong there that we could make better? And so I could tell you story after story after story of our history that has all been built by the amazing people around us, because we are constantly looking for, seeking out, and taking action on feedback.
Mm.
And so, how do you go from 697,000 to 10,000 children? You surround yourself with great people with big hearts, and you ask a lot of questions.
So you you had this initial BHAG of 10,000. Did you wait till you got to 10,000 to change the number?
No.
No. When did you change the number?
Well, I'm always working on it when we're about 3 years out. And I know I project what I think what I think is going to happen. In the early years, it was a little harder to project with no roadmap. There's no roadmap for what we're doing.
No precedent in
There's
place, right?
no,
Yes.
and no one really to talk to about that. And so when I knew it was coming, I could tell it was coming, but I so then you go, well, if we started from zero, totally no idea what we were doing, and we got to 10,000, well, what's the next worthy goal? Well, it has to be something equally crazy, because anything less is boring and not significant enough. And so we created the next mission, and that was, how do you help 100,000? Again, same thing, absolutely no idea how we were going to do it or how we get there. But there are bigger things at work. I am really just channeling a much bigger story, and making things happen that are supposed to be happening down here. I call myself more of a facilitator, because I help all of these other amazing people have the opportunity to serve, and they do it wholeheartedly and with such enthusiasm. But yeah.
When we were at the recent event that you had for Cares for Kids to give everyone an update on what was going on, I was sitting there, and because we're doing Supreme Leadership Series this year, I was thinking you'd be an amazing person to get on that program with the John Maxwell's and Andy Stanley's, because, backgrounds and all those things aside matter, but you had a vision to do something to make the world a better place, specifically with kids. When you have a purpose like that you can rally people around, serving others before self is what we do here at our business. You can rally people around a cause like that, because it's not a cause that can be argued against. You'd have to be a bit not good, not right, to argue against that cause. Because if you ask anyone, would you like me to serve you and serve you best? Everyone's like, of course, right? It's just not that common. But you just don't find that many people. And I remember sitting there that day, and I was thinking, all of these people have been enrolled in Cares for Kids now.
Amazing.
And I was like, where do I write my check?
Right
Sitting
here.
there, no, because everyone wants to be involved in a great story, in a story that brings out their best. And you were telling the story that day so humbly, but I sat there watching you, and you're a pretty darn good facilitator there, Miss Marci Fair, because you had me on the end of my chair, and everyone else there. It was I had a great week that week, I remember, but it was like, this was the best part of my week being here. So thank you for enrolling me and being involved. So,
Well, may I just say something about that
sure,
though?
please.
So it wasn't that I was that great. I was communicating the greatness of everyone in the room.
Good point.
I was communicating what our leadership does to support serving in our community. I was communicating what our ambassadors do in each market center to lead and be sure that they find the children in need in their communities. I was communicating what great donors like you have made possible because we can't do it without the financial support.
Tell me one or two personal stories about a child or two so we can make the idea of Cares for Kids, make it come to life for the people that are here so that that love and that hope and how that could potentially change the trajectory of a young person's life. Tell us a story or two that you have.
Well, one thing I really want to stress where I think that Cares for Kids has been able to serve so many, it's not me. It's not about me. My objective is how can I eliminate barriers to make it easy for other people to serve? So I look at everything we do and I try to erase anything that would make it difficult for someone to get to have the incredible experience of being involved in one of our main events. So we serve children directly too. I just mentioned several fabulous charities, but we also serve kids directly, depending on which event we're talking about. And so I'll give you, so one of the things we do, we believe heavily, of course, in the importance of the children's education and the future opportunities those create for them. Well, so we give kids book bags filled with school supplies. I mean, I can't imagine being a young child and not
And
having
not
that.
have
And
one.
there's a lot who don't. And surprisingly, what I've learned over the years, a lot of the most important reason why those kids get them, it isn't actually for the school supplies. It's so that the counselors on Friday can fill them with food for the kids who aren't going to have food for the weekend.
Oh my
So
goodness.
sometimes you start something thinking there's this reason for it, but there's actually a different reason or another impact. But I don't deliver those book bags. I facilitate it to help as many other people as possible have that opportunity. So, because it's in the delivery that the magic happens. So, I have to share one story with you.
Please.
So, one of our great agents, Leslie Kunkel at Sugarloaf, a few years ago, was delivering backpacks, and her whole back seat was full of them, and she was at a elementary school, actually was just about to leave and was at the curb, and a car pulled in with a dad and two young children, and the dad saw the bags piled in the back and went over to Leslie before she pulled out and asked her if she was possibly donating them, and she said, well, yes. And he said, well, I can't afford them for my children. Could each of my children please have one? And she said, of course, that was the whole purpose. So she opened the doors, and the children, we get them in cool colors so the kids get to pick a cool color they love.
Yeah.
And so the little girl picked one and the little boy picked one, and they put them on their backs. And the dad, Leslie got to see this. The dad put them in the back seat, and the kids wouldn't take their bags off. So he had to strap them in the seat with their book bags on their backs because they were so
For
happy
their
to have a book
first time
bag.
that they actually had
had a book
something. They
bag.
had a book bag. Yeah.
Yes, and so Leslie will never forget
I
that
bet. I
experience.
bet.
In the early years, was a part of delivering our We Care Bears. Believe it or not, we deliver these little fuzzy bears that people love. I could tell you story after story on them, and we have now had several vendors' children, agents' children in the hospitals in our communities receive them, and they're very sweet, very loving. So I was at the Affleck Children's Cancer Center and had some bags with one of our agents, several in the very early years. And I was standing there waiting for a nurse to take them and put them in their storage room. And a nurse came over to me and said, are you donating those? Well, yes, of course. And she said, may I have one? I said, of course. And so she took one, and I just looked over my shoulder to see what she was going to do with it. And she went and got down in front of a mom who was sitting in a chair at the Children's Cancer Center. And clearly, the nurse was having to tell her what was going to be going on for her child. And she gave the bear to the mother.
Wow.
And I will never forget that.
Wow.
So my goal is, how many of our people can we give the opportunity to serve?
So as many of the people that are out there today, 532,000 kids, whatever the number is today, and their parents, they would in chorus sing back to you, forget the role that you play, but they would sing back to you their heart of gratitude and of love for you serving them. But who gets the better part of the deal? Do they get the better part, or does Marci Fair and does CARES, do you feel like you're winning?
My hope is that all of our people who serve are
Right.
they're the real winners of the giving. You go with the intent to give, but you become the biggest recipient.
Yeah.
It's the real reason we're all here.
I love that. I love that.
So there's lots of
Great advice from one of the all-time goats, the greatest of all time.
You should talk.
Anyway, thank you so much for being a part of Personal Professional Best today. And again, thank you for everything you're doing to make Atlanta a much better place.
Thank you for everything you're doing to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Marci. We all want two things in life. First, we all want to become our best at home, in the workplace, everywhere, with everyone. If you're honest, we'll own up to the second thing that we all want in life: to become rich, really rich. Best and rich, what all of us want in life. And guess what? All of us can get what we want. Best, the place where we all want to go. Serving others before self is the roadmap to get us to that targeted destination. We can all become rich, really rich as well, although we may have to redefine our definition of rich. Rich is achieving your best in relationships at home, in the workplace, everywhere, with everyone. Serving others is the path to best, and the result is to become rich, really rich. This month, we celebrated a new national holiday, Juneteenth, the culmination of a war between serving others and serving self. It's a reminder of June 19, 1865, when the federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, and gave word to enslaved African Americans that they were free. More than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Abraham Lincoln lived his life focused on serving others. He built a lasting legacy that can only be described as best and rich. MLK famously communicated that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. And his legacy lives on as well, best and rich. What will your legacy be? If you want to be your best and you want to be truly rich, you simply need to make the choice to live your life like those that have become best and rich, serving others before self and expecting nothing back in return. Today, we spent time with one of the best, who embodies a life lived in the service of others. She's been married 34 years, raised 4 amazing children, and she's helped build one of the best real estate companies in Atlanta, and has built a legacy now serving the underserved children in our community. She embodies best, and guess what? She's rich indeed. Thank you, Marci, for showing us the way.
Hi again. It was an absolute pleasure to share the story of Cares for Kids with all of you today. If you're looking for a way to make a difference in the lives of children in your community, check out caresforkids.com to learn about how you too can make a lasting difference. Best is waiting. Meet you there.